Shalom everybody, let's do the counting for the Omer on this day. Baruch atah Yahuwah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat haomer hayom yom ezrim v'chamesh. Blessed are you, Yahuwah our Elohah, King of the universe, who's commanded us to count the Omer on this day, day 25.
Shalom, beloveds of the King. Praise Abba Yahuwah. That today we come to that halfway mark where we are in that time of where we are now counting this Omer, trusting Abba for what He's going to do, and where we are now halfway in understanding what you're saying in this time, and halfway in preparing ourselves for this time of Shavuot, which is going to be a very significant time, very prophetic time that we are entering into. And I am excited because I just know that Father has got such a mighty work to do. And as we are working through Yirmiyahu, how much we are understanding what Father is saying in this hour. You know, just like yesterday's lesson where the kings do not want to listen and the leaders do not want to listen, but there are laymen that are listening. And we saw that even in the movie. A lot of the laymen would come and sit there by Jeremiah and by Baruch, that's reading the letters of Jeremiah and speaking to the people, and the people are starting to turn. So as we are starting to listen to the word, let us be faithful in listening to what Father is saying in the hour that we are in, that we do not be caught unawares. So let us read chapter 27 tonight. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, son of Yoshiahu, the sovereign of Yehudah, his word came to Yirmiyahu from Yahuwah, saying, "This is what Yahuwah said to me. Make for yourselves bands and yokes. Then you shall put them on your neck." Well, that makes no sense. You know, sometimes the Father will speak a word to get us to do something that doesn't always make sense. And sometimes the things that the Father does and the things that He asks us to do, it sometimes makes no sense to the mind. But we are to be able to understand Father's mind and His thoughts are not our thoughts. And Father, whether we like to know it or not, is very prophetic. This is a prophetic book. And when the Father speaks, He speaks prophetic. And this is why when He does things in a prophetic way that might not make sense to your natural mind. But understand, Abba is not in a physical realm. He is in a spiritual realm. And what we do in the physical realm affects the spiritual realm for that which He wants to do. And that's why many times when He asks prophets, like when He told him, go and take this and go and bury it in the ground, and then you are to be able to go shave your hair off. It didn't make sense, all these things. But this was a prophetic sign of what Father wanted to do. And so He says, "And shall send them to the sovereign of Edom, and the sovereign of Moab, and the sovereign of the Ammonites, and the sovereign of Tsor, and the sovereign of Sidon, by the hand of the messengers who come to Jerusalem, to Zedekiah, the sovereign of Yehudah. And you shall command them to say to their masters, Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, the Elohah of Israel, say this to your masters. I have made the earth, the man and the beast that are on the face of the earth, by my great power and by my outstretched arm, and I shall give it to whom it seemed right in my eyes." Now make a note of that tonight, because we must understand. Father will raise up kings, and Father brings down kings, and Father will do what He wants to do, and who are we to say otherwise? Because at the end of the day, we must remember, he's the one who made the earth. He's the one who has made man and beast. And by his great power and by his outstretched arm, he has made all things. So who are we as human beings to want to put man in a box, to want to put Yahuwah in a box and make him be like man and think that he will do things like a man? No, 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 no. In this chapter, we are going to understand how difficult it was. I really had this revelation today, working through this chapter, for me to understand how difficult this was for Jeremiah to do. This was not an easy task. This made no sense to a natural mind. It made no sense. And yet, at the end of the day, this is what the Father is saying, that he's the one that will raise up. I shall give to whom it seemed right in my eyes. Father will do what he thinks is right in his own eyes, despite man and despite man's plans. You see, the one who man looks at, remember, when the Father called David, well, what did Samuel do? Samuel had all the other brothers of David standing there. Oh, surely it must be this one. Surely it must be this one. Strong, men of stature. And here comes a young shepherd boy. And I mean, Samuel's standing there thinking, now, what is going on over here? Of all the men, he goes and chooses this young shepherd boy. Because Father's ways are not our ways. Father's thoughts are not our thoughts. And we need to stop trying to think things of what the Father will do in our natural mind, because he doesn't work that way. And so he says, verse 6, and now I have given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, and the sovereign of Babel, my servant, and the beasts of the field I have also given him to serve him. So look at this. He is now going to give all these lands. He's going to give them Moab, Ammonites, Edom, Tsor. He's going to give it all to Nebuchadnezzar. He's the one who's going to do it. And all nations shall serve him, and his son and his son's son, until the time of his land comes. And then many nations and great sovereigns shall make him serve them. So you see, Father will raise up a king, and he raises up a king for a certain period of time. And if he wants to make that king raise up, and he wants to make that nation powerful, and he wants to make that nation be a powerful nation in the face of all the other nations, then the Father will have his way in doing that. But when the time comes that he wants to destroy a nation, when he wants to bring down a nation, then who are we to say no? And so, verse 8, and it shall be, the nation and reign that do not serve Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, and the one that does not put its neck under the yoke of the sovereign of Babel, that nation I shall punish. Wow. Now you see, it doesn't make any sense. Who the heck was the sovereign of Babel that Father wanted him to be the one to be ruling over all these other nations? And now he's telling the prophet, and he's saying, this is what you ought to say to them. They ought to be able to also allow themselves to come under the leadership, or under the power of this land of Babel. They ought to surrender themselves to Babel, to this king, to the sovereign. Now he says, declare Yahuwah with, and it says, and that nation I shall punish, declares Yahuwah, with sword, and the scarcity of food, and the pestilence, and I have consumed them by his hand. And this is now what is going to happen. Now, isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? Because let's just take this to where we are right now. What is going to happen? Whoever's not going to come out of a now spiritual Babylon, this Babylon that is going to be this world system and this world dominance that is now ruling the world, all these nations of the world, is now seen as a Babylon system. Whoever is not going to come out of it, because he says, come out of Babylon, what is going to happen? They are going to be destroyed with a sword, with a scarcity of food, with pestilence, until I have consumed them by his hand. So you see, now there's going to be, look at what the Father does. Once again, what is the Father going to do? The Father is going to hand over power to who? To Hasatan, to the kingdom of darkness, to the devil and his demons that were cast out from heaven, and they are going to be given authority over the earth for a times half a time. This is what we see, what says in Revelation chapter 12. And so this is why we must understand that when the Father says he's going to do something, we have to just understand that people try and put things in their little box and say, oh, wow, people are not going to go through. He's not going to allow us to go through anything. He's not going to, we're all going to be raptured out of here. And oh my goodness, every time you switch on anything to do on YouTube, it's just, this is it now, the rapture's coming. And so if we have a look and see in Revelation chapter 12 from verses 7, and it says, and there came to be fighting in the heavens, and Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his messengers fought. But they were not strong enough, nor was there a place found for them in heaven any longer. And the great dragon was thrown out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Hasatan, who leads all the world astray. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in the heaven, now have come the deliverance and the power and the reign of our Lord, and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers, who accused them before a Lord day and night, has been thrown down. So you see, look what he says. And I heard a loud voice. So he casts, listen, verse 9, and the great dragon was thrown out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who leads all the world astray. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. And we must understand, he is going to be given it, then in verse 14 it says, and the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness to her place where she's nourished for a times and half a time. Why? Because the dragon is going to be coming against her. So, we would ask ourselves, why on earth would the Father do this? Why would he allow something like this? But the Father knows what he's doing, because this must happen in order for Yahushua to come. And so we must understand what is being spoken of here, saying, if we're not going to come out of Babel, they're going to go into Babel. Then he's going to say all the nations are going to come up against the king of Babel, and then that nation is going to be destroyed. And now the Father's going to destroy Babylon in the end. Verse 9. So do not listen to your prophets. Okay, now let this be a warning here. So do not listen to your prophets, or to your diviners, or to your dreamers, or to your observers of clouds, or to your sorcerers who speak to you, saying, do not serve the sovereign of Babel. Now, can you imagine? Now, I just want you to think, how difficult must this have been? This is Jeremiah telling the people that they are going to serve the sovereign of Babel. Now tell me, that couldn't have been easy. This is not easy. And now he's saying, do not listen to the prophets. Do not listen to all those people that are going to say to you, oh, the Father is not going to want that. The Father is saying that we are going to be not going to go into Babel. We're not going to go into Babylon. We're not going to go into this Babel. No, that's not going to happen. And what is he saying? Do not listen to your prophets. So do you see, there's contradictory messages going at the moment. There's the prophets that are going to speak peace, peace. Father's not going to bring any destruction against us. Father's going to protect us. And then there are those prophets saying, if you're not going to come out of Babylon, you are going to be destroyed with Babylon because you need to come out of it. He says, for they prophesy falsehood to you, to remove you far from your land, and I shall drive you out, and you shall perish. So at the end of the day, listen to what they're saying. So do not serve the sovereign of Babel, for they are prophesying falsehood to you, to remove you far from your land, and I shall drive you out, and you shall perish. So see, those who went, remember what was the prophetic word that the Father said? Those who went into Babylon, after the 70 years they would return, and then once again they would come back to their land. But for those who were going to stay in the land, what was going to happen? They were going to perish. But the nations that bring their necks under the yoke of the sovereign of Babel and serve him, I shall leave in their own land, declares Yahuwah. And they shall till it and dwell in it. So you see, so by the nations that bring their necks under the yoke of the sovereign of Babel and serve him, I shall leave in their own land, declares Yahuwah, and they shall till it and dwell in it. So even though they are going to have Nebuchadnezzar being this sovereign that is going to be able to rule over them, they will stay in their land and they will be okay for all these other nations that he's talking about. I spoke to Zedekiah, and the sovereign of Yehudah, according to all these words, saying, bring your neck under the yoke of the sovereign of Babel and serve him and his people and live. Why should you die, you and your people, by the sword, by the scarcity of food, by the pestilence, as Yahuwah has spoken against the nation that does not serve the sovereign of Babel? So do you see? What is he saying? For the nation that is not going to want to serve the nation of Babel, they are going to have scarcity of food, they're going to be able to die by the sword, and they're going to die by pestilence. So you must understand, what does it say in Matthew chapter 24? When you see these things come upon you, there will be all these things that's going to come upon the people. They are to flee. They are to run to the mountains. They are to come out of those places. They are to come out of the cities. They are to come out of those places. And whoever does not flee from these places, they are going to be destroyed. And so, do you understand how important it is that we need to listen to what Father is saying? Because understand, this is where he's telling them, you're going into exile into Babylon. You're going to go into exile into a foreign, coming under in a foreign land, and you're going to come under a foreign king. So we clearly see Abba's ways are not our ways, and he will do what he wants because he's got a reason for doing this, because he is going to teach his people a lesson. They need that. This is what they want. This is who they want to serve. This is how they want to serve. So go into Babylon because this is what you want to do. So he says, do not listen to the words of the prophets who speak to you, saying, do not serve the sovereign of Babel, for they prophesy falsehood to you. So see, right now, we are going to have to be very careful what words we're listening to. Who are the people that we're listening to? There are many teachers out there speaking words saying, oh, you're going to be raptured. The Father is not going to do anything with his bride. And so they're not even being prepared. They are being told they are the bride. They don't serve him the way that they should. They don't keep his ordinances. I mean, yesterday we read very clearly that he turns around and he says in verse 4 of chapter 26, and you shall say to them, thus says Yahuwah, if you do not listen to me, to walk in my Torah, which I set before you, to listen to the words of my servants, the prophets, I am sending you, even rising up early and sending them, though you have not listened. So you see, what are we listening to? Who are we listening to? Are the people that we're listening to bringing us back to the truth of the word of the Father? Or do they speak a word yet live something else? What are they doing? There's people that are speaking things yet they do not live according to the truth. So he's saying, for they prophesy falsehood to you. For I have not sent them, declares Yahuwah, yet they prophesy falsehood in my name, in order that they drive you out. Then you shall perish, you and the prophets who prophesy to you. This is a serious warning. How many chapters? I want you to see. Last chapter he spoke about the false prophets. Chapter 25 he spoke about it. For the next 2 or 3 chapters he's going to speak about it. I tell you, how many times in just the time that we have been reading for the last 27 chapters, how many times has he spoken and said, don't listen to the false prophets. Don't listen to the voices of these people that are telling you peace when destruction is coming your way. How many times has he said it? How many times has he said that you are not to listen to these teachers and these prophets and these shepherds? How many times? But people continue to listen. People continue to want to follow these false things. These teachers and preachers and prophets that keep telling you peace, peace. When I tell you something, my goodness, great destruction is at hand. There is war on the horizon, and famine is on our doorstep. It's not even on our doorstep. We have already entered into the time of where famine is now going to be happening, because everything is playing out the way that it should be of what is being done according to the plan of the enemy. And he says, then I spoke, so he says, then you shall perish, you and the prophets who prophesy to you. Then I spoke to the priests and to all the people, saying, thus says Yahuwah, do not listen to the words of your prophets. You are prophesying, who are prophesying to you, saying, see, the vessels of the house of Yahuwah are brought back from Babel soon now, for they prophesy falsehood to you. How many times in just one chapter they said, as he said, do not listen to the voices of these false prophets speaking to you? How many times? Do not listen to them. Serve the sovereign of Babel and live. Why should this city become a ruin? So do you see? We understand this makes no sense. It makes no sense. Jeremiah is the only one sitting over here telling them, you are going to serve the king of Babel. You are to go hand yourself over to them. He's going to march into, he's going to destroy the temple, he's going to destroy everything. You are to march into that land with them. Do not resist it. Surrender yourselves. It makes no sense. Yet, this is what the Father is speaking. But if they are prophets, and if the word of Yahuwah is with them, let them now make intercession to Yahuwah of hosts, that the vessels which are left in the house of Yahuwah and in the house of the sovereign of Yehudah and at Jerusalem shall not go to Babel. So at the end of the day, he's saying, if those vessels are not to be handed over to Babel, then these so-called prophets must make intercession. So do you see, are the false prophets making intercession? Or are they just speaking words that comes from their own desires of their own flesh? Or have they really lent their ear to the ear of the Father? For thus says Yahuwah of hosts, concerning the columns, and concerning the sea, and concerning the stands, and concerning the remainder of the vessels which are left in the city, which Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, did not take, when he exiled Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, the sovereign of Yehudah, from Jerusalem to Babel, and all the nobles of Yehudah and Jerusalem. Thus said Yahuwah of hosts, the Elohah of Israel, concerning the vessels that remain in the house of Yahuwah and in the house of the sovereign of Yehudah and of Jerusalem. They shall be brought to Babel and be there until the day that I visit them, declares Yahuwah. Then I shall bring them back and restore them to this place. And remember, this is exactly what needed to happen, because remember, when Daniel goes and interprets his dream, and what is he doing? He's using all those set-apart things of the Father, all those set-apart vessels of the Father. He was using them, and then Daniel spoke up against him. We read that in Daniel, that all these set-apart vessels of the temple get taken into Babel, and they start to use them. And then Father brings judgment against him. So you see, by the time Father raises up Daniel is then the prophet that is then going to speak up against the king of Babel. And so Father then uses Daniel. So praise Abba Yahuwah. And so we thank Abba for what he's revealing in this time and for what he's doing with this revelation of Yirmiyahu and the warning that keeps coming. And may Abba protect us, and may Abba help us, that we are those that will be like his sheep, that will be his sheep, that will hear his voice, so that a voice of a stranger we will not follow, that we will guard our ears and guard our eyes and guard ourselves from that which we should not listen to. May Abba bless you all. Enjoy your evening. Shalom, shalom.